And I am convinced 6 months into this administration, the worst 6 months start to any administration in my lifetime. I'm convinced so many Americans are like, well, maybe I didn't bargain for this. Maybe I should have voted for President Trump. Some of these people who, for whatever, reason, decided not to vote for President Trump, who was such a great president, and they vote for Biden. I think they're like buyer's remorse big time. They're like filling up their gas tank. Whoa, this is costing a lot more. Price of eggs, bread, milk, lumber, price of TVs, price of an airline ticket, price of a hotel. Everything's up. And crime in the streets. And by the way, March was the highest month on record of illegal crossings at our southern border until April. And April was the highest month until May. And May was the highest month until June. That's what you call a trend in a very bad direction. So I think all that they're like saying this is. So I think that's how it gets through is like Americans have common sense and they're figuring it out.
So, all right, so one other thing on big tech, and then we'll move on to some of the other stuff. Are you worried at all, this is sort of an extension of the black pill question, but just that this stuff has become so big that no matter what you do at this point, do you think it's possible the ship has just sailed and the government cannot do anything?
Look, I'm concerned. I'm nervous. I mean, don't misunderstand. I think just, obviously with the question you asked, you share that same concern. But I mean, I always come back to like, this is America. We're Americans. We get things done. We've solved problems. We've tackled all kinds of obstacles. I mean, there's some people who make the case that, it's just this tough, rugged attitude is in our DNA. You think about the people who started this place over in Europe. They said, you got to practice your faith a certain way. And they said, no, we don't. We'll get on the ship. We'll risk it all. We'll go to this place called America, and we're going to do it the way we think we need to do it, and the way the good Lord wants us to do it. And they did it, and we've overcome everything and become the greatest country ever. So I still feel like there's a ton of people who think like you and I do, who think like the folks I get to represent back in the 4th District of Ohio, who are willing to say, no, we're not going to let it happen. We're going to fight. We're going to do what it takes in the right way to prevail in the end for freedom, for liberty, for free speech. So I guess I'm optimistic, and maybe it's just because I'm, like you, I'm American, and I love the way we conquer things and get things done.
Well, I always tell people I'm a world-weary optimist because I'm an optimist. I don't think I could do this if I wasn't. How could you say what you think for a living if you were an optimist? But I'm also a realist, so that gives you a little world-weary. But to that point, though, if there are enough of us, or let's say there's more of us than them, what do we do about some of this election stuff? Because it seems to me, I played a clip on the show last week, which was a compilation of Democrats in 2018, including Kamala and Klobuchar. You probably saw it.
Oh, yeah.
It's about 15 Democrats talking about rigged elections, talking about voting machines that don't work, talking about hacking, all of the stuff that I'm pretty sure you and I could get blown up here on YouTube right this very moment for talking about if we talk about it now.
Right. Because, Dave, you forgot, only Democrats are allowed to object to election results. We can't object.
I have to make a note about that.
We're not allowed to. I mean, you think about the folks on this January 6th commission on the Democrat side. Benny Thompson objected to the election results in 2001 when President Bush won. Jamie Raskin, the lead impeachment man in impeachment round 2, he objected to Florida on January 6, 2017. Jim McGovern, on the day we had the second impeachment debate on the floor on January 13th, he brought up the week before January 6th, and he said Republicans objected to the will of the people last week when they tried to overturn the will of the people and they objected. So I got up to speak right after that, and I said, well, I said the fine gentleman, the chairman of the Rules Committee from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, said that we tried to overturn the will of the people. I said, but guess who was the first person to object on January 6, 2017? Guess who was the first person? It was the right fine gentleman from Massachusetts who objected to Alabama. Think about that, Dave. Alabama, President Trump won by like 28 points. So he can object to Alabama. But Jim Jordan and Republicans can't object to Pennsylvania, where they unconstitutionally changed their election law. I mean, think about this one fact. The election law passed by the legislature, as the Constitution requires, in Pennsylvania said election ends at 8 o'clock Tuesday. Of course, election day is always on Tuesday, and first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. It ends at 8 o'clock Tuesday. Democrats sued in the partisan state Supreme Court, and the partisan state Supreme Court, controlled by Democrats, says, nope, we don't care what the legislature said. We don't care what the law says. Election day now ends at 5 o'clock Friday. They just extended the election for 3 days. So I'm not allowed to object to that. But Jim McGovern can object to Alabama when Donald Trump wins Alabama by 28 points. You got to be kidding me. So that's the part that it drives. And it's, my guess is you spend a lot of your time doing the same thing I do, pointing out the freaking double standard with these people. But you have to do it because if not, they'll get away with it more.
Let's not forget, I think his name is Josh Shapiro, the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania, who announced 2 days before the election that Biden was going to win Pennsylvania before the election. Yeah,
the guy counting the votes announces 2 days before who's going to win. Maybe there's a problem with them. Call me crazy. Maybe, but of course, Democrats like, oh, you guys are crazy. Somehow we're the conspiracy theorists for just like raising a question about that.
So what do you guys do on messaging then? Because I'm not kidding. I went through the 9 bullet points in the last Texas bill, on the election that the HB3 that they were going crazy over. And it was things like ID, it was paper trail, it was having cameras when you're counting, and a couple very, very basic things. There was nothing about race in there. There was nothing to stop anyone from voting. There were actually things like actually extending benefits so employers could give more time for people to vote. And yet it's called racist. It's repeated in Associated Press and on NBC and everything else. Like, how do you beat that narrative?
I think, well, again, you point out the facts, you do like you did, but I also think
I'm past that point. What else do you do besides that?
I think Americans get it. So take this, the Texas Democrats. So first of all, America sees Texas Democrats getting on a private plane, taking their football and going home, not doing their job, coming to, this is emblematic of what the Democrats think. I'm going to not do my job and I'm going to go to Washington where I can say I'm a victim. I mean, that is like so Democrat, right? So they come to Washington, they spread COVID around to everybody else. They fly on a plane with no mask. They probably had to show ID. So I think sometimes just the common sense of Americans like, these people are crazy. And I am convinced 6 months into this administration, the worst 6 months start to any administration in my lifetime. I'm convinced so many Americans are like, well, maybe I didn't bargain for this. Maybe I should have voted for President Trump. Some of these people who, for whatever, reason decided not to vote for President Trump, who was such a great president, and they vote for Biden. I think they're like buyer's remorse big time. They're like filling up their gas tank. Whoa, this is costing a lot more. Price of eggs, bread, milk, lumber, price of TVs, price of an airline ticket, price of a hotel. Everything's up. And crime in the streets. And by the way, March was the highest month on record of illegal crossings at our southern border until April, and April was the highest month until May, and May was the highest month until June. That's what you call a trend in a very bad direction. So I think all that they're like saying this is. So I think that's how it gets through is like Americans have common sense and they're figuring it out.
Congressman, just to be clear, they're not kids in cages anymore. Yeah. They're young people in fun centers.
Yeah, exactly. I've been down.
Since I can tell you're not holding back today, you just mentioned Biden. I mean, what do you think is really going on with Biden? He is not all there. That's my professional diagnosis.
Well, look, it's in some ways it's a big concern because as much as we talk about all the issues we've talked about, in the end, our adversaries see the same thing that we see. And, you saw, this is probably 3 months ago, when our Secretary of State, Secretary Blinken, was in Alaska, in Anchorage, meeting with his Chinese counterpart. And, we had our team on one side of the table and they had the Chinese on the other side. And the treatment that the Chinese gave to the Secretary of State of the United States of America, I'm like, it was embarrassing. And frankly, you didn't see Secretary Blinken really push back. It's like, if that happened, well, first of all, that would not happen in the Trump administration to Mike Pompeo. But if it did, if they were crazy enough to say those kind of things to Pompeo, I know Mike, he'd have got up, like maybe he'd flipped the table over, or he would have got up, or he would have said, with all due respect, that is entirely wrong. You don't talk to, there would have been pushback, real pushback, like you're supposed to do in real diplomacy when you come from a position of strength. And it didn't happen. And I'm like, now we see China, what they said to Japan just a couple of days ago. And now we see what Putin is saying about any type of things we're going to put in Europe. I'm like, that's what happens when you don't project strength. And when you have a commander in chief, you have a president of the United States who is behaving in the way President Biden is. And it's dangerous for not only the United States and our security, but frankly for our allies and how things work in the world. And that's troubling, I think. And I mean, obviously you see it, and I think so many Americans do.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.